I'm Kate Had. I'm a product marketing and strategy director here at Bonterra, but I actually came from the Donor Drive team. So I've been working with Amber and Jesse at Cure SMA for, 3 years now. It's been a while, so that's amazing. And prior to that, I was actually on the nonprofit side. So I have a background working as a fundraiser and as a marketer. So actually was a user of the Donor Drive system back in the day. So I've had a fun trajectory there. And I love getting to bring together clients like Amber and Jesse to share their experience about Donor Drive and just fundraising and nonprofit expertise overall. So with that, I'll kick it over to Amber to tell us a little bit about herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Ewert-Snyder, and I'm the Senior Director of Database Management at Cure SMA. And in that role, I lead the organization's technology practice, including our work with digital fundraising platforms. And I also served as the internal lead for the digital transformation project that we'll talk about today, including our adoption of Donor Drive.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you all today. My name is Jesse Ains, and I am the Vice President of Development and Marketing here at Cure SMA. So within my role, I oversee both our marketing and development departments here at the organization, which includes all of our fundraising and a number of our development programs, which we'll kind of dive into in just a moment. And I was fortunate enough to be able to partner with Amber on this implementation project in K from Donor Drive.
Amazing. So before we get started talking about digital transformation and talking about technology, we would love to hear from you. What is working with your technology today? Is it going great? Are you getting data from one system to another is a struggle? Our supporter experience isn't what it should be. You're missing crucial features. Maybe it's a complete mess. So I know Amber and Jesse, you can relate with a lot of these specific things from prior to your switch. So we'd love to just get a pulse on how everybody's experiencing technology today.
Awesome. As those results are trickling in, it looks like most folks are saying they're missing crucial features. So, not too much
Great.
of a surprise, but yeah, most folks are
Yeah.
missing those features.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk a lot about how you prioritize those features, how you think about what to get out of your technology and if it's time to consider a switch. So I just want to start out by talking a little bit about Donor Drive, just giving you some context. Ashley set up, that Donor Drive is part of the Bontero ecosystem now. But we've actually been in the space for over 20 years, specializing in peer-to-peer fundraising. And really what we bring together is a modern, intuitive supporter experience with engagement engine, personalized coaching, flexible, easy to use event builder with clicks not code, which is huge for people in the peer-to-peer space. And then we also have integrations into other systems. So for example, Amber and Jesse will be talking about their Salesforce integration. So really excited to share with you what we can do in that space as well. With that, I'll kick it over to Jesse, I believe, to talk a little bit about Cure SMA and what this amazing mission is all about.
Yeah, thanks, Kay. Before we jump into the project itself, we definitely wanted to share just a little bit more about Cure SMA and who we are as an organization. So Cure SMA is actually a national nonprofit. We were founded in 1984, and we are dedicated to really funding the groundbreaking research and support programs necessary for people living with spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA for short, which is a rare neurodegenerative disease that affects and impacts a person's muscles used for abilities and activities such as breathing, walking, eating, or crawling. To give you a little bit more context about our organization, so as you might be drawing comparisons throughout the next hour, our operating budget hovers around $16 million annually, and we have a staff of about 40 to 42 people located remotely around the country, and our headquarters is in Chicago. For digital fundraising, we host a number of programs and campaigns online, including our peer-to-peer events, our distinguished events, DIY fundraising, endurance, and of course, all of our individual giving and annual fund campaigns. At Cure SMA, we have several fundraising programs hosted on Donor Drive specifically, of which include our Walk and Roll program, which is our flagship peer-to-peer fundraising program, which is comprised of nearly 50 walk events located throughout the country, and it is one of our biggest revenue generators in terms of our fundraising peer-to-peer programs. Our next largest program is our DIY program, and that really aims to meet the community where they're at, and really provides that flexibility for people to fundraise however they see fit, from athletic events to birthday fundraisers, and most notably our new streaming program, Stream Away SMA. We also host our endurance program on Donor Drive, which is a number of premier endurance running events across the country. And then last but not least, on Donor Drive, we host all of our individual giving campaigns, donation forms, honorariums, and memorials to ensure that we're providing that streamlined donor experience.
Yeah, and we were actually just before we came on, we were talking a little bit about I got to go to their national conference for QSMA last year. And I actually got to volunteer at the conference, and I was in the room with infants who had, were mostly siblings of SMA, but I was talking to them about, are the kids in here, are they SMA? Do they have SMA, or are they siblings? And they were like, you really can't tell anymore because of the impact of this organization. So if I would have been there 10 years ago, I would have been able to clearly see this child is unable to walk, this child is severely delayed. But because of the strides that SMA has made in just a very short time, the impact is like visible and visceral and amazing. So it was just really great to hear directly from those families. So I just love to share that story because it just connected to me what this disease means, and it's a rare disease, so you probably don't know somebody who has SMA, but it is a big impact for these families that are experiencing this disease. So to jump into a little bit of the conversation, I know that was, let me just like collect my emotions a little bit because it is such an emotional cause to talk about. But today we really want to talk about your experience with your digital transformation and how we're able to support your mission in this amazing way. So a lot of you on the call who shared, that you're struggling with your missing features or you have gaps. We just wanted to anchor a little bit about what we're talking about when we say digital transformation and what a digital tech stack really looks like in the nonprofit space. So as you can see here, you've got your nonprofit tech stack, you've maybe got online fundraising, donor management, events, finance, volunteers, marketing, all these things. A lot of people are experiencing a lot of disconnect with these tools. Things are not integrated or integrated well. That causes a lot of expensive maintenance and tech debt. And then the result on the back end is stale donor pools. You're not able to reach the donors that you need to reach. You're not innovating. You're not bringing in new generations or different supporter types. Stifle fundraising growth. If you're seeing your revenue stall, that's something that we're seeing across the industry is a decline in individual donors. It's really real for a lot of us. So figuring out how to reinvent your fundraising program, you can't really do that without the right technology. And then something that we'll talk a lot about with Amber and Jesse is just subpar supporter experiences. If your fundraiser who comes to you, wants to support you, is already activated by this amazing mission, and they can't do the basics of like sending an email and asking somebody to fundraise for you, like what a letdown, right? You have this person activated, by your cause and not being able to activate them to fundraise. So that's where that 3 times active number of activated supporters comes from that we'll dig into a little bit more, but really just giving your supporters the experience that they expect in today's 2025 technology market. So I think Amber or Jesse, I'm not sure who, but can you tell us a little bit about your before and after, where you were with all these people who said that they don't have the features that they need, and then how your tech stack looks today?
Yeah, absolutely. So before our implementation and our tech overhaul, as we like to call it, we had really previously invested in an all-in-one product for our CRM, marketing, digital fundraising, advocacy, surveys, and merchandise. So basically all of the technology that was touching our constituents. But in each of those areas, we really were experiencing significant struggles. The tech wasn't optimized to do what we needed to do in any of those areas, and the complexity of the systems was really costing us in upkeep and staff skill and time needed to actually manage and run those systems. And the lift to run and maintain the product was also significant, which really resulted in our development team helping maintain and do a lot of the day-to-day work for marketing and digital fundraising, instead of focusing on true development fundraising work. Our supporter experience also wasn't what it needed to be. We had continued to receive numerous complaints about how difficult our systems were to use for registration and fundraising, which really isn't what you want to hear from your supporters and your community. And our sites really just no longer reflected the look and feel of our brand as an organization. Further, we also had significant tech debt, and we really would have needed to heavily reinvest in our original product to meet the current needs and address all of our future growth plans. But after our implementation and really just over, what, gosh, I think we're coming up on 3 years now, we implemented a new CRM, digital fundraising solution, and really replaced all the other functions of our previous all-in-one system. So we actually invested in best-in-class tech that integrated and really allows us to trust our data. We have one dedicated staff member who maintains and creates all the events and campaigns with clicks instead of HTML coding, which Kay referenced at the top of the call. And we've really decreased the time it takes to build out an event from just over 90 minutes to about an hour and a half to 2 hours, down to about 15 minutes. Now our development team is actually focused on fundraising and working with our supporters and our community instead of all of the admin tasks. Our supporter questions and complaints have drastically been reduced by this improved user experience. And the number of active fundraisers that we have has increased from about 17% to about 62% now, is what we're looking at. So it's a really tremendous year-over-year increase and decrease on those $0 fundraisers, which we all know and love so well. And on top of that, we have really seen a cost savings, and we will continue to see a cost savings to the tune of about $200,000 over the course of our contracts for replacing our tech and really moving to this new tech stack. So we're really excited about where we're at today and where the future looks for us as an organization.
And Jesse, one thing that just sticks out to me is when you guys talk about like the number of supporter calls that you were getting, when you had your previous tech stack and you'd launch your event. And I know some people on the call have probably experienced you launch your event and you're just like waiting for all of the people to call because they're going to have issues. And I was in that boat. Like I was getting the calls and having to walk people through how to create their fundraising page and all of that. And then you launch your donor drive and you're like, are things okay? Are
It's
people
like
like I can see people registering, but are they okay?
it's crickets, and which is great in the best way when it comes to registration issues from our community. I mean, I don't want to say they're non-existent because, of course,
Right.
we still get some from people who simply just need support in walking through the process. But the reality is, it's from a different lens. It's not because they don't know how to navigate or they don't know where
Right.
something is. It's just because they simply need help. But yes, that has been huge when it comes to our team and really being able to kind of refocus their efforts on how they're working with the community.
Amazing. So tell us about how you did it. I mean, that is like 3 years to do all of that. You guys amaze me every time we talk about it.
Yeah, so I think for us, if 4 years ago you asked us the poll that you pulled up today, we would have been on the complete mess spectrum. So we are really happy to be on our new tech stack and no longer be in that category if we were to take that poll today. But again, like our transition, our change really kicked off with a notice that our CRM was going to be sunsetted. So we, at that point, started evaluating the current state of all of our fundraising technology. And as you've heard, we certainly went beyond into email and advocacy and so much more that the all-in-one legacy platform was doing for us. But from a fundraising perspective, we really honed in on our top objectives, which for us, as I'm sure many of you, to raise more money for our cause to support Cure SMA. And we wanted to make sure that we were setting up our fundraising team for success long term with what we knew was going to be aggressive goals for revenue growth. We also knew that for our peer-to-peer program specifically, we were really going to have to focus on our retention and our recruitment rates for our peer-to-peer program in order to meet those goals. And it was very apparent to us immediately that our legacy system could not help us meet any of those goals. So that's where we expanded to replacing just our CRM to CRM plus every function of our legacy platform. And when we kicked off planning, we also evaluated our resources because we knew that they were limited. And when I'm talking resources, I'm talking time, dollars, and manpower. Jesse talked about the size of our team. So we're a relatively small organization in the space. And the timeline was not something that we could adjust for the project. We had a healthy budget to work with, but manpower was something that we really needed to focus on and that we decided that we could solve by putting some of our resources there. So while we had our internal project lead, we had an internal project team for the various technologies that we were going to be working with, we really decided that we needed to bring in some experts to help us with everything from discovery to navigating the vast marketplace of options that were out there for all of the technologies that we were going to evaluate. And this was a really key part of the process for us. We could not have pulled off the transformation that we did alone with just our internal team and the support of our vendors. So we chose a partner that had been through the process countless times with other organizations and was really able to walk us through step by step on the decisions that we needed to make. And then they ended up bringing in the technical expertise that we needed to implement all of the solutions that we were bringing together for CRM, digital fundraising, marketing, automation, and advocacy primarily. So really evaluating and understanding those resources up front set us up for success for the project. We knew what we needed and we were able to plan our project with those resources that we had in mind. And in addition, our organization, like I'm sure many of you, was very change adverse. We may still be a little change adverse. But we wanted to start talking to our internal stakeholders very early on. We wanted people to be prepared. So every step that we took, we made sure to do updates in staff meetings and individual team meetings. We held some organization-wide calls just to talk about this transformation project because we wanted everyone to be in the know, understand what was going on so that we could get their buy-in long term. And that also included a lot of engagement with our leadership team because they were going to be really key to our success. So starting with the notification of that sunset, on to expanding the scope of our project to include all of these other tools that we needed to be successful and grow. We made sure to have conversations and bring in the right groups of stakeholders at the right time to understand where they were at currently and the resources that they were going to need long term to be successful and help us achieve our mission. But on the fundraising side specifically, there were three stakeholder groups that we worked very hard on engagement with, which was operations, development, and marketing. These teams were not only the ones that were doing a lot of the internal implementation work, but they were also going to be our key end users once we actually implemented and started adopting these systems. So we wanted to get their feedback and engage them early and often, every step of the way, to make sure that we had their buy-in throughout the entire process.
And I just want to reiterate how important that change management is. And Amber and Jesse, your guys' role and the work that you did like cannot be undersold because really, I mean, if you're not doing that change management from the beginning, not only does it impact your transformation project, your implementation of your software, whether you're doing something, just the digital fundraising, for example, or a full CRM implementation, it not only affects how quickly you can do that and how quickly you can get consensus and buy-in from everybody on what to decide, but then your adoption. The key to this is that your teams are going to use it, right? And if they're not bought in and they feel like they're forced into something, we know that even with a complete mess, we're comfortable with our messes, right? There's like a reason why we stick with dysfunction. Like it's comfortable if that's what we know. But being able to really show them and include them in the process and make them feel empowered, like an amazing job there. And Amber, your experience, having the depth of experience on your team, but then also just like the way that you build connections. Like I've talked to your team members about this process too. And like the way that they trusted you and Jesse to lead, but also to like bring them in when they needed. There was like that internal trust, which is so important for how to break down those silos between like, especially when we talk about marketing, operations, and development, like talk about the three most siloed teams in a nonprofit space. So just being able to bring those people together and get consensus and then drive the adoption that then drives the results. Amazing. So tell us more about the your keys to success here and how you really did it.
Yeah, so both of you kind of stole my thunder, but the
Sorry.
first one is really about breaking down silos. And, to Kay's point just a couple minutes ago, I think many of us in the MPO space can relate to this, that oftentimes within our departments you can feel very siloed off, and that is something that we recognized as an organization, frankly, before we even really started this project. And I think if there's one thing that I could say about this project is that it really did open the door for us to really broaden the lines of communication and really work more proactively together and intently together. And I think that was one of the biggest keys to the success for this project was really recognizing that it does take a village, but that you have to be really concerted and strategic with how you're using people and when you're using people and bringing people into the loop, but that everybody also feels interconnected to the project because to your point, okay, that adoption is so key. And if you're not bringing in people to the fold, then it's likely that they're going to feel left out and that they may not be the partner in the project or the end game that you're looking for. And so, within this particular project, of course, it was the marketing development and the operations teams that were so key for shared ownership and success in this project. And really, again, including those people and leads from the beginning meant that each team had specific goals and responsibilities as part of the project. And, as part of the process as project leads, it was really Amber and I's responsibility to not only manage down across the teams and ensure that everybody knew what they were responsible for and felt connected to the project, but also that we were managing up with executive leadership and ensuring that they knew what was going on, where relevant, and that we sought out their feedback and guidance on key decisions as needed. Another big key to success was really focusing on the end goals, and I think that this looks different for every organization and even really for each department involved in the process within the organization. Our organization particularly has really ambitious growth plans and strategic plans for the next few years, and we recognized that back when we were first starting this process, and we knew that then what we were using platform wise really wasn't going to be able to support us in getting to where we needed to be and wanted to be. So we really had end goals in sight for not only the organization, but also for each team. And it was really important for us to ensure that those goals were clear and communicated and really remained at the forefront of the project so that each team's why was always top of mind. Because while this process was fun, enjoyable, and enlightening, it was also a lot of work, right? And I think that that's important to keep in mind because nothing worth having ever comes easy. But for us, it was really staking claim to that why and what the end game was for us and what that was going to look like when we were done. Another big point was really just being open to change and embracing that flexibility and ambiguity when it comes to the process of implementing new tech and really utilizing the opportunity to evaluate your existing processes to really optimize both internal and external workflows. As mentioned, change can be really hard regardless of organization size, but it really does offer the chance for a fresh perspective and new opportunities for your organization and your department to really reach their goals. And I think the last key to our success was really prioritizing the must-haves, again, for that end game for us. So what is it that really mattered for long-term success for the organization? And so for us, it meant a number of things. It meant that our fundraiser experience was drastically improved. It meant that whatever platform or platforms we went with or partnered with had a robust product roadmap. It meant that, in marketing and development, our development teams were spending less time on administrative tasks and more time on, grassroots fundraising. And it meant that maybe we had to deprioritize some other things, right? And that doesn't mean that they have to be deprioritized forever. It just means that in this particular moment and project, you really have to decide what is most important and what's going to actually get you to that end goal. And we were also incredibly flexible with, the approach and the vendors or the number of vendors or partners that it took to get us to that end goal.
Awesome. Amber, you're going to take us more through those non-negotiables that Jesse teed up. And we've got a lot of Chicagoans as hosts here. So if you can tell our reference to the bear and how we spend our time watching really stressful drama. So
Yes, I can now finally say that I watched The Bears. So a few of our key non-negotiables really came out of the initial discovery sessions that we did internally that really, set the roadmap for us internally on what we needed with all of these systems, including our digital fundraising platform. And for that platform, first and foremost for us was that top tier supporter experience. So like Jesse said, we had a lot of ongoing complaints that we wanted to make sure to address. So for us, the goal was a top-notch experience for our supporters that was both engaging and user-friendly. And we also wanted to make sure in our selection process with our vendor that we chose a vendor that would be able to uphold that experience long-term as the industry evolves and as our events continue to grow. Because with our legacy partner, we experienced a lot of stagnation in features and industry trends that we just weren't able to adopt because of technology limitations. So we wanted to remove that barrier with the new platform that we selected. A seamless integration with our shiny new CRM was also very important to us. So our goal for the CRM itself was really to create that 360 view that we all want of our constituents and our financial data, and truly make that the system of record for our entire organization. So we needed to make sure that we selected a product that not only integrated with our Salesforce product, but also was robust and had the flexibility to bring over all of the data points that we wanted to see in our system of record. In addition, we also, again, wanted a solution that was going to continue to evolve and innovate. We had experienced that stagnation before. So when we were talking to Donor Drive, for example, we wanted to know not just what Donor Drive could do in that moment, but also what the long-term roadmap looks like for what we could expect from the product in the future and what direction that they were going in. And we wanted a partner that had the flexibility to keep up with those evolving trends. And was really dedicated to enhancing the platform over time and not just building something and leaving it as it is for 10 years. And as an organization who works with a community that has varying accessibility needs, choosing a partner that was dedicated to accessibility and inclusivity was also very important to us. Those values are paramount at Cure SMA, and we wanted to make sure that we chose a vendor that could uphold those same values.
and of course the pursuit of excellence, right? Obviously. Awesome. Tell us more about the partnership part, because I know, Amber, especially for you, this has been something that we've talked about at length and has been so important. And I know I don't know how often you're talking to somebody on our team, but I feel like it's a lot because of the partnership that we've felt with you.
You guys hear from me all of the time. And in the end, the partnership was really one of the top reasons why we chose Donor Drive. There's a lot of systems out there that had a lot of the features that we were looking for, but we made the decision that we did with Donor Drive because of the partnership that we envisioned with them and that they were really able to illustrate for us through the sales process. So with our legacy system, it was really hard to get any of our needs met. So whether that was a small new feature request or a bug that carried on for years, we really felt unheard and ignored, and our needs weren't being met. So through the sales process, we really vetted the partners that we were looking with to make sure that we could have a true partnership and that the needs of organizations like ours could be met. And when I say like ours, I really mean, we're a relatively small organization in this space, and sometimes the needs and wants and the opinions of those organizations aren't heard. But we really felt like with Donor Drive, we were going to have a voice in needs that we'd have with the product. And I can say that that really has been the case over our partnership over the last 3 years. And the team provided a lot of support during the buying process, really took them through the ringer. So we did a number of demos, hands-on sessions, deep dive into those features that were really important to us as an organization. And we really wanted to make sure that the partner that we selected was open, responsive, and communicative, because we felt like having those qualities during the sales process was going to be indicative of the long-term relationship that we'd have with the vendor that we selected. And Donor Drive, more than any other vendor that we worked with, was also willing to give us a peek under the hood on what they had publicly available for their roadmap. So we were really able to understand that they were forward thinking and innovative, and that they were going to be able to support us long term. And paired with those, we were also able to have a lot of great conversation with current clients. So we were able to hear from them, not just directly from Donor Drive, what the implementation process was actually like, what support that they received from Donor Drive during implementation, and then on a day-to-day basis once they implemented the product. And we were also able to understand what type of ROI that they had once they implemented Donor Drive, which was very important for us. Again, like Jesse said, we have very ambitious growth plans. So we wanted to make sure that the product that we picked was going to help us meet those end goals in terms of revenue and recruitment and retention.
Amazing. So, how do you find that? Because it's really hard, right, to know during a sales process what it's going to be like when you're not working with that individual anymore, when you're working with support, when you're working with product. So, we created a few questions here that would help you sort of evaluate what are the things that are important to make sure that you'll have long-term success. So, obviously, onboarding is a huge thing. What resources do you have to learn the platform? How much time will it take for you to get up and running? Especially, with Amber and Jesse, they had a very specific runway. We have to be off the platform at this date. It will not exist anymore. We need to have the new platform launched on this date in order for us to run our events and not see a decline in revenue. So super important things to consider. How easy is it to get data in and out of your platform? If you're looking at going with a Salesforce, everybody says that they integrate with Salesforce. How do they integrate with Salesforce? How does it actually work together? How easy is it for the data to flow? Does it go one way? Does it go two ways? What is the situation? Really digging in, having product people come on your demos is a really great sign that they're willing to work with you and talk through that. And then how does it fit into your existing technology? How is it going to work with anything if you're not switching, if you're staying with the CRM, or if you're staying with a marketing platform or whatever the case is, how is it going to fit into that bigger picture, and really digging into that a little bit more so you're not surprised later on. There's a lot of platforms, unlike like Donor Drive is a very open API platform. We have our APIs published publicly so anybody can build onto our platform, but not every software is like that. So really just understanding what the situation looks like. Product development, as we talked about with Amber, what role does client feedback? What happens when Amber submits a question to our team? Where does that go? Who does it go to? How does it work? How often does the product roadmap get shared with customers? Are you having like a quarterly call with your product team where you can hear, with other customers and hear from them what is happening and what the future goals are? Is there functionality that is really the focus? I know, Amber, for you guys, one thing that came up when I talked to you right after you purchased Donor Drive was we really want to see where the product can go for individual giving. What are going to be the innovations that we make there? And we shared some things, and we've made those things come true, hopefully. So just really seeing like, what is this platform going to do for us in the future? And then is there product functionality that is not the focus? Are there things that you guys will not be doing that we might need another solution for, or might need to look elsewhere for? And then, of course, how do you prioritize those must-haves? So does any of the functionality that they've seen come with additional fees? Are there additional costs for implementation? Just really transparency about the product pricing here, and making sure that you know what to expect. Amber, I know we've talked about this. When you guys purchase Salesforce, for example, that's a product that you have to build out quite extensively, working great for you guys, but also like knowing what those things are that are transparently included in the platform and what takes a build, because a lot of it is custom. So let's talk about results. How is it going? How's it going now?
Yeah, so really our implementation with Donor Drive put a renewed focus on, again, the importance for our teams to work together. We had a lot of silos. So we really put the key focus during our selection and implementation and then adoption process on those top three stakeholder groups. And that decision was so important to help create this shared division of responsibilities and the roles that we have today. So, again, Jesse talked a little bit about the burden that our development team was shouldering on our legacy platform in terms of administrative tasks and day-to-day things that they needed to do that weren't directly related to fundraising, which accounted to about 15 to 20% of their time, which was very significant, especially for the size of our team. So now management and creation of our websites, in addition to really owning the brand on our donor drive sites, lives with our marketing team. Our operations staff is in charge of data entry and integrity, transactions, and overall system administration. And our development team has been able to shift their focus back to where it should be on fundraising and building relationships with our supporters.
Awesome. And Jesse, take us through what that journey looks like when you're a supporter and how you use these systems that are integrated fully to really personalize that supporter journey and create an experience that makes people want to come back and stay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So really overhauling our tech stack gave us a fresh perspective and an opportunity on truly understanding our supporters and what they need from us to be successful in their fundraising journey with Cure SMA. Before we even began the transition process, we again had received, mountains of feedback from both internal and external stakeholders, community members, constituents that really informed a lot of the decisions that we made when it came to when it came to our tech stack, and also our must-haves for the platforms that we transitioned to. For example, we knew that in order to really be able to prioritize and optimize our workflows and efficiencies, we needed tech platforms that were nimble and also provided us the flexibility to build as we grow as an organization and team. It was really important for us to also recognize that we can only do so much as an organization and a team of mighty but few people. And really, in order to accomplish our goals, we had to have products that provided us the ability to implement task automations and communications that still felt personal and provided that one-on-one support to our constituents and participants. So, a quick example of this is a task automation workflow that we were able to set up that's been a tremendous help to our development team. And so, for example, when a fundraiser reaches a certain dollar threshold or money that they've raised, there are triggered messages through Donor Drive that we've set up that get sent to them, in addition to a task that gets created within our Salesforce CRM that is assigned to the specific event manager and charges them or tasks them with a specific outreach action to the participant, whether that be a call or a text message or a personal one-to-one email, what have you. And so from that perspective, it's really reduced sort of that communication burden or expectation where people can now on our team dig in even more specifically and personally with these folks. And so our constituents and community members and participants are getting sort of tapped from multiple angles and touched from Cure SMA. And from a leadership perspective, we can also see who is completing these tasks on the team. And it's not from a big brother perspective, but more from like providing us the opportunity to really see what specific actions that our team members are taking in conjunction to what's actually moving the needle forward when it comes to fundraising and engagement within a particular program. And so that's really helping us make better informed decisions. And Amber is going to touch on this in just a minute, but really revamping our tech stack has also provided us the visibility to be able to track that action to impact from that data perspective, and then allowing us to tell a story in a more integrated way, not only about our supporters, but also about our programs. Because if we can't trust the integrity of our data, to be able to make those informed decisions, then we're really going to continue to struggle to move participants and community members through their life cycle and journey within an organization. And so, from that lens, we've really been able to flip that on its head and really be able to make those informed decisions and move our community members and fundraisers through that life cycle in a much different way than we were before.
Yes.
So, two of the biggest changes that we've seen from that specific data-driven results perspective are really the reduction of staff time that it takes to create our event templates and our event sites, in addition to the number of active fundraisers that we now see. So before we made this platform, transition and this tech stack overhaul, I mentioned it would really take upwards of 1.5 to 2 hours for a development event manager to get an event site up and running. And when you think about it, we have upwards of 80 events throughout the year, with 60 or so, 60 to 65 of them being hosted on, Donor Drive. And so when you think about that, that's a lot of time from an efficiency standpoint that is spent on this administrative function. Now, since we have transitioned, we have somebody on our marketing team who is actually managing all of the event websites and the templates across all of our fundraising all of our fundraising programs, including our individual giving, donation forms, and campaigns. And so we've got it down now from 2 hours to an event site or donation form being launched within 10 to 15 minutes, which is huge. And again, puts that time back in our development team's pockets to really be able to fundraise and spend more time with their participants and team captains. In addition to that, one of the biggest hurdles we've also faced as an organization, and I'm sure many of my development folks on the call can relate, is that we used to have a significant number of $0 fundraisers. And for whatever it may be, I think a lot of it we could really attest to the user experience on our previous platform. We had a lot of people who would register and sign up for an event, but wouldn't do anything after that. And since we've made this transition, we've nearly 3x'd the number of active fundraisers and participants that we have fundraising for the organization, which is really, quite remarkable. And a lot of that I think can be attributed to, of course, the user experience on our new platform, but then also that supporter journey and what I, was just kind of speaking to moments ago, and our multiple touch points that we have built into both our automated workflows and then also our personal one-to-one outreach within the development team that has really lent itself to our participants feeling like they have somebody that they can actually tap at Cure SMA and reach out to and have, a specific coach really working with them that they can turn to. And I think that that has made all the difference in the amount of people that we have fundraising on our platforms now and for the organization.
Is amazing. The bane of every fundraiser's existence is $0 fundraisers. And I know you're trying to
Mhm.
get that 62% up even further. So excited to see what you
Still
guys do in
driving it.
2025. I know, right? It's everybody what we all want to do, right? So we'd love to hear a little bit more about specific things from Donor Drive that are really helping drive the success. And we're coming up on 15 minutes left in the call. So just a call out if you have any questions so far for Amber and Jesse, we'd love to hear from you. Please let us know, what questions you have about how to do this at your own org. But Amber, tell us a little bit about cover processing fees and how this is working for you guys.
Yeah, so we were really excited when the cover processing fees came out not that long ago. It was something that we were eagerly awaiting when we talked about those things that we were looking for, particularly on the individual giving side. So this is something that we went in and adopted right away, and we've had a really great adoption rate. So we have 55% currently who have gone in and checked the box to cover processing fees for us, which has resulted in a 2.59% lift in that online revenue that we have from Donor Drive. So that has been a really exciting new feature that we were able to implement.
Yeah, and we've had cover processing fees for a while, but I think the feature you're talking about is the default, right? So
Yeah.
you can default to it being on for your donation page, and when our customers have that on by default, that adoption rate just skyrockets. So I know Amber and Jesse are testing that out right now on a donation form. So we're excited to see the results.
And then the next feature that I have loved since the moment that we transitioned onto Donor Drive is the Events Insight dashboard. So I think in our legacy platform, information like this was really hard to find, or sometimes you had to export it and then, do a bunch of things in Excel, which we don't always have the skill or the time to do. So it's really helpful to be able to have our fundraisers go directly to this dashboard and see their key metrics for success, understand how many people are registered, how many dollars they've raised, what type of revenue that is. And I was really excited once we moved into year 2 of Donor Drive to start to see that year over year comparison as well. And I think that this has made a really big impact for our team internally. It's something that I encourage people to use in their one-on-ones with their managers quite a bit, and something that can be really helpful to share with our external committees that we're working with as well.
Yeah, I know lots of organizations that have multiple events and different event organizers per event. Just being able to see on a snapshot, how is my event performing and how is it performing against last year and how many participants do I have and how many are actively fundraising, like all of that, just have it built in, while Amber can still do all the roll-up reporting and all of the complex dashboards about their overall performance. But having this at a quick glance is just one of our customers' favorite things.
So one of Donor Drive's latest product releases at the end of the year, actually two of them, if you really think about it, were some of my favorites. And Amber and I immediately jumped on them and implemented them as soon as they were live.
In
Honestly,
time for end of year, by the way,
yes.
like
Well, yeah.
amazing.
So the timing honestly could not have been any more perfect either, because we had just begun our year-end campaign as an organization, which I'm sure for many of you as well is one of our largest campaigns, and we rely heavily on the success of that campaign at Cure SMA. And so, before this new release, if a donor was on our organization's website, so curesma.org, and wanted to make a donation, they were actually redirected to a Donor Drive donation page, which is what I would call, an external page. And it wasn't the end of the world, just because of the way that we've designed the pages in tandem. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But when it comes to the user experience, of course, we always want to try and reduce the barriers to entry and the number of steps that it takes to donate. And so with this new feature, we now have the ability to really embed the donation form right onto curesma.org. So the end user never really has to leave our website, which is huge. And it, of course, not only reduces the barrier to entry and, the steps it takes to donate, but for me, from a marketing perspective, it really establishes that trust and credibility for a donor because they're never leaving your website. And then, of course, the new donation recovery feature has also been amazing. I think we live in this age now where it's very easy to get distracted, or simply might change your mind. And so, if somebody's on our website and is looking to make a donation, and then they X out of the form or perhaps leave and come back, we have this new donation recovery feature, which really asks them. It double checks to make sure that they want to walk away, and then it kind of follows them around our website, which is fantastic. And so that's another feature that we loved, and we're so excited to be able to turn on at year-end campaign last year.
Yeah, it's usually we talk about removing friction in the donation process. We purposely added in some friction. So if you go to X out of this form, you get this pop-up that says, "Are you sure?" Like you really probably want to make that gift. And then if they still X out, then this little pop-up here is movable, but it can be in like the lower right-hand corner and pop up and then follow them throughout the website. And if they come back, still cooking, so that it takes them right back. And then if they click donate, it takes them back to the donation form, exactly where they stopped, with the amount that they had filled in. So it just like creates that great experience where they're sort of like if you were shopping on Amazon and it's asking you if you're sure you don't want to buy that thing. Yeah, it's just really great feature to capture more donations. And then scheduled
And
messages. Oh yeah, go ahead.
oh yeah, and so and I touched a little bit about this when I was talking
Yeah.
about the supporter journey, but this is another favorite feature of mine on Donor Drive, and it's the scheduled messages that we can really create for our programs, and so kind of referencing what I mentioned earlier, we were able to create an entirely automated communications workflow within Donor Drive that actually follows the participant on their fundraising journey from the day they register all the way past the event date. So from being able to send an email through Donor Drive if someone hasn't customized their fundraising page yet, to thanking them for raising $50 and congratulating them on earning their, special commemorative T-shirt, to then providing them an event survey one day post event. The scheduled messages feature really has reduced again the amount of time that development staff are spending on sending out these specific emails, and then it really just, of course, allows them more time for that personalized coaching, calls, meetings, outreach, and touch points that I think so many of us are desperately, clawing for when it comes from a time perspective, because, we all know we're wearing many hats. And I
Mhm.
think marketers from a development perspective should not be one of them in that regards. And I think the scheduled messages feature has really allowed us to more time to dig in personally with all of our participants and fundraisers.
Amazing.
And then last but not least, I really wanted to touch on brand awareness again from that marketing perspective. When we made the transition to Donor Drive, we really took that opportunity to innovate at the organization, and we used this implementation and transition to really refine and hone our brand. And so when I say we ripped the band-aid off, we ripped the band-aid off. We completely redesigned our organizational website in the process as well. And you can see that actually depicted on the right. So the right image is curesma.org, and then the left image is actually our Donor Drive walk and roll peer-to-peer website. And so both the site redesign and Donor Drive were really created together to, again, create that seamless experience and not only highlight the experiences and vibrancy of our vibrant nature of our community, but also, again, to establish that trust. So if you're going to a Donor Drive page for Cure SMA, you feel like you're still within the confines of the Cure SMA brand, which is really important. And I will just say a little plug for the Donor Drive design team. They crushed it on our design. And again, the partnership between, them and our team was truly incredible, just in the way that we kind of melded both of our website design and then all of our program designs to really kind of flow seamlessly. And so you can see, our new sites are contemporary, bright, and then of course, user friendly, which were really the end goals for us when it came to the brand and how it was reflected online.
Awesome. Amazing. So before we grab questions and a final call, if you have any questions, please let us know. But we have a quick poll just to see if you're interested in hearing more about Donor Drive, so that we can better follow up with you after. Awesome. And while that runs, I'm going to start asking some questions of Jesse and Amber while we've got some time left. So one thing that I'd love to hear from you guys, I think this is on a lot of our minds right now in the nonprofit space, but and I didn't ask them about this beforehand, so they don't know. I'm asking them to putting them on the spot a little bit, but a lot of us are wondering about a lot of uncertainty in federal funding and how that's impacting. I know Cure SMA, you guys work a lot in advocacy and in I assume that you guys rely on some federal funding as well, and would love to just hear how you guys are talking about that internally. Where you guys see that playing into your strategy this year.
Yeah, so I will go ahead and start, and then Amber, please feel free to chime in if there's anything that you'd like to add or that I miss. But I think to just be perfectly transparent, as an organization, we actually don't rely on any federal funding from a revenue perspective for the organization. So from that lens, we are in a different space than many nonprofits out there. But with that being said, we do rely heavily on specific program funding in terms of research. So we are a health-based organization, and one of our priorities is focused on rare disease research, specifically research in the SMA space. And so, of course, with everything that's going on from the federal, program lens and funding, we are talking about that internally and really ensuring that from an advocacy perspective, we are being as vocal as possible and we are being as prominent as possible and are continuing to do that work from the advocacy space. And then from the development perspective, we're being very clear about where we stand as an organization and also what our goals are from a
Oh,
research perspective so that we are in a position, should we need to be able to, what I would say is, absorb some of that from a research perspective, and how can we ensure, from that organizational perspective, that we're in a position to be able to continue to fund SMA research, whether it not be, whether it's, through a government program or whether it's through our organization, and with the support of our donors. So, I absolutely feel for, where everybody is at in the space. And so I think it's really just dependent on, your organization and, kind of what your space is specifically, and how you're navigating it.
so being transparent really with your supporters about our research
Yes.
funding could be at risk here, and we might need to ask more of your support this year.
And I think one really quick thing to add that I'll add to that is, um, I think sometimes as NPOs we have a tendency to be a little bit gun shy, but I think in this
Mm,
time and place we really need to be vocal and be strategic about, what you're sharing and the way that you're sharing it. So for example, we just ran a national advocacy campaign last week, essentially trying to secure advocates from all 50 states to advocate for funding in SMA research funding in a new Department of Defense bill. So we're moving on this, right? And we're using
mm.
this in order to continue to move forward the advocacy efforts of the organization.
Amazing. Great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really helpful to a lot of people who are unsure of what what to do in this space, right? Um, so one thing I wanted to, we talked about a lot of things with around your digital transformation and a lot of amazing ideas for how to do this. Amber, if you could start us off and just what would be your like one thing that you want everybody to take away? What's your one piece of advice that outranks?
I think for us, one of the key factors for success was the project team that we built. So both the internal and the external resources that we threw at this project. And I think it's of the utmost importance that you really consider who you have on that team, who's leading the team, and what extra resources in terms of manpower and budget that you need to bring on to make sure that you're successful. Because those, I think, are the most critical factors for success in this type of project.
That could be maybe you need to hire somebody, right? Or maybe you need to get an outside vendor to help, fill in some gaps and do some of the analysis. Unfortunately, I don't think we all have Ambers on our team. Um, but if you can find yourself an Amber, that's my number one solution there. But great, great. And for you, Jesse, what would you say? Other than find
Yeah,
yourself an Amber.
yeah. Other than find myself an Amber, which was going to be my first point, I think the second point is really just reiterating, like, being open for change. I know this sounds so cliche, but like literal insanity, the definition of that is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right? And so to Kay's point earlier, we all know and love the dysfunction of our organizations, right? And sometimes it can be easy to just stay in what you know. But I can tell you, having come out on the other side of it, like it is truly worth it. And we are in a vastly different place than we were 3 years ago because of what we've done. And, had we not dove in and made these changes, I can sit here and tell you that we would not be in the space that we are today without doing so. And so I would just say be open to that change and be open to, some of the difficulties you might experience along the way, but just keep at it because, it is worth it, to get to that end goal, whatever that might be for you and your organization.
Amazing. Well, that's our time for today, everyone. We want to thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we'll send out the recording afterwards. Ashley, do you have any other housekeeping to add?
No, that was it. I just want to thank you all on the audience for sticking with us and spending an hour with us and giving us your time and attention. And to Kay, Amber, and Jesse, thank you for sharing your expertise and your experience. It's much appreciated and much valued. And to folks on the line, again, we are sending out the recording, so be on the lookout for that. But again, thank you for your time, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon or morning.
Amazing. Thank you
Awesome.
guys so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.